Welcome to another edition of Blockchain Insider Interviews. I'm Sam Maul. We're in Toronto, in easily the coolest building that I've been in the past 2 days. I think that's safe to say. We're with Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, wearing an incredibly nice suit, which I wasn't expecting.
Thank you. You know, we went in Rome. We're here at Sibos as a banking conference, a lot of banking meetings, so you got to wear the part.
And your staff has asked me to point out the socks, Michael, if you would pan down. They do match the tie, they match the concept of Swell. You have your own conference called Swell. Most importantly, the name came from...
Swell, really, there's a lot of Ripple water metaphors in what we do. You know, our core product is called XCurrent. The next product we launched is called XRapid. So Swell is kind of building on the kind of water theme of what Ripple is doing and kind of spreading the ripples around everything we're doing.
That effect, right? That
effect,
constantly
exactly.
goes.
I mean, ultimately, as you know, Ripple is really focused on how do we enable an internet of value? How do we make value move the way information moves today? And that's our big kind of multi-year, 10-year view of how the world will evolve. And it's really how do we dial that back and to make it tactical and real today and tomorrow. And I think if you want to enable an internet of value, you've got to connect the repositories of value. Right. And the repositories of value, as big as the Bitcoin value proposition is today, the banks own trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of assets. So if we want to enable an internet of value, we've got to connect the banks and payment service providers and MSBs, and we're excited to have made a bunch of progress on that.
So how are you feeling with the conference so far? This is the inaugural event for this. We'll talk about the timing and some other things that are happening in Toronto, but overall, how do you think the conference has gone after your first day?
Look, I'm thrilled, and I will admit, there's a certain nervousness when you have your inaugural event. Things running smoothly, are people going to show up? You know, yesterday we had kind of our lead keynote with Ben Bernanke, interviewed by Gene Sperling.
I was going to come there, by the way. So if you're going to have your first event, Ben Bernanke, nice. You got Sir Tim Berners-Lee coming up. You've got Don Tascott.
You have Stefan Thomas and Vitalik this afternoon. That should be great.
Yeah, when you look at the speaker list and the buzz that we've heard maybe at a different conference that's going on, which we will talk about, well done. Right?
Thank you.
That's the way to do a conference.
So as for the inaugural event, I'm thrilled. I think there's always things you'll learn and we can do better, but to some degree we're trying to be the unconference relative to the Sibos. I think we did try to be complementary with some of what they're doing, but Ripple has been fortunate. We've got a lot of customers, and we heard last year our customers, they want to hear more from us, and we felt like the best way to do that is to set up shop here, and it's been great so far. It's been very busy. Packed house for Bernanke and a bunch of the sessions yesterday, and I expect the same today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been around Ripple forever and a day, right? Back when Chris Larson was there, and one thing I appreciate about Chris is he constantly learned how to refine the message, right? In the space you're in, educating bankers, corporates across the piece, that's a huge part of this, right? Sure. This isn't a simple, this is not a simple topic, right? So that idea, what you talked about building this conference out makes sense because education and that component of it is massive.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has served Ripple incredibly well is I think in contrast to some in the community that are kind of taking a very horizontal view, we're talking about literally over 100 use cases. We've been very specific about one. Right. Payments, particularly cross-border payments, and let's go deep in really understanding that product set, that need, that customer, how you sell into that customer. And so I think, as I look at where we are today relative to a year ago, I think that focus and really understanding that segment and that customer and being able to go deep and really solving that problem has served us incredibly well. And it will remain focused on payments. It's obviously a massive industry. The problems we're solving can be measured in the trillions of dollars. That isn't to say that I don't think there's other great blockchain use cases, and eventually maybe Ripple will address some others. But today, I kind of view it as the earliest days of Amazon, where Amazon said, hey, we're a bookseller. I mean, the first name of Amazon was not Amazon, it was Amazon Books. And they built a platform to serve a need to sell books, and then they did another vertical and another vertical and another vertical, and then obviously productized the platform. I think the best way to build platform technologies isn't by trying to be that horizontal, because by the time you build the platform, the needs have changed and evolved. If you build it really successfully for one vertical, in this case a really big one, you can put yourself in a really good position to build it up for others as well.
So I wanted to be a psychiatrist when I was young, so I always look for key comments that was made. So he said something that was interesting if you look back over the past year. So you've been CEO since January.
Yep.
You've been with Ripple, though, since 2015, right? You're
right.
president and COO. So personally, I think when you look at a company, you look to the CEO, and they really help establish the culture and focus of what they're doing. So if you look back over the past year, from January to now, and we're surrounded at a very cool conference, how would you kind of summarize your stamp on the company and your tenure as CEO?
Well, so you're right. I've been in the company 2.5 years, and Chris and I Chris Larson, the founder and previous CEO,
and a great guy.
We really great guy.
Love Chris.
We've had a great partnership, and we're very complementary in many ways. And so, he remains very involved in the company as chairman, and I talk to him almost every day. So I don't. It's not a demarcation point that I look at and say, hey, January 1, when I officially took over as CEO, that there's some left turn or right turn.
You didn't change the logo. You didn't, yeah, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, but I think for me, it's been the mark over maybe 2.5 years of really driving that focus and really understanding that customer. And you have been around Ripple for a long time, and there are other use cases that Ripple had toyed with in the early days, and some other what I'll call in retrospect experiments. I think really over the last 2.5 years, we've gotten increasingly focused and gone deep around this segment. And again, I think that's served us really well. The only thing that's I think materially changed during the course of 2017 is, I do agree with you that personalities of the leadership impact the culture of an organization. I like to be aggressive, and I think even what you're seeing here with Swell is, look, I think Ripple's an incredibly good place, and we've been incredibly fortunate. Part of that's skill, part of that's luck, but it is to press our advantage. And I think we want to continue to be aggressive in the ecosystem, continue to invest in the ecosystem. I think we have some things we're teed up for Q4 that I'm really excited about to continue to invest in the overall ecosystem. And when I say that, by the way, I'm not even just talking about the XRP ecosystem. I will also be a little long-winded here just to say I think all boats will rise in the blockchain world. Like I'm long Bitcoin. I want the whole ecosystem to do well, and I think that will serve Ripple well. When I see things in the ecosystem that I think are bad for the ecosystem, I think that's bad for Ripple, and so yeah, I'm going to speak out against that. ICOs, I think, are one of those examples.
I can check that one off the list. We were going to come to that. So as an outside observer, somebody watching this, for the listeners, I'll give you a great example. Sibos is going on, so the incredibly established banking conference. I've spoken there a bunch of times. Ripple has a massive booth and presence at Sibos, hence the incredibly wonderful outfit that you're dressed in. It's again very well established. A lot of suits. It's Sibos. It is what it is. We noticed when we walked outside all the Ripple cars lined up, which made me smile and went, "Oh, okay, that's a stamp of hey, we're here." Right? I like that, by the way. I like seeing that, But again, you are part of that conference too. You have a stamp there and have been.
And look, I mean very genuinely, we have tried very hard to be complementary with Sibos. And even when Ben Bernanke, we did our keynote here with Ben Bernanke, we intentionally scheduled that around the keynotes at Sibos. Because ultimately, look, we want our customer, which are the banks, if they want to attend, we don't want to put them in a position where they have to choose. There's a lot of great stuff going on here in Toronto. I've been over to Sibos a bunch. We've been on the floor of Sibos for 3 or 4 years. And we're there this year, and we will continue to be. But we also, again, as I said, a lot of our customers said they wanted to hear more from us. The programming we're doing here is a little bit different, and it is a little bit more of the fusion between finance and technology. And I think that has served us well. We've had a lot of interest in participating and being here.
What I like about Swell, the conference that you're having, we're not paid to do this, by the way, guys. So this is just me being complimentary. So I look into the camera. It's very narrowly focused, and you had talked about that, right? From Ripple overall, it's continually narrowing the focus, if you will, of what we're going to do and what we're going to be good at. And what I like about this conference, it's the same thing. Right? And I like the intimacy of these type of conferences, the on-conference approach, right? Sibos is literally thousands upon thousands of participants. Money 2020, which next week, the same thing, right? You go to a Salesforce, you have to rent damn cruise ships and put people on them. It's just ridiculous. I'm a huge fan of these type of conferences where you get Ben Bernanke and he talks, you literally have a chance to walk up and talk to them.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to keep it small. You know, I don't mind sharing with you. We had a couple thousand people that wanted to be at Swell that we turned away. Right. And that isn't because we don't want more people engaged with Ripple. It's because we wanted to make sure we had the highest quality audience on stage and in the audience. People that really are influencers and customers and can affect the vision we have around the Internet of Value.
So you're really doing this well, by the way. This is fantastic. It's like you read my notes. So let's talk about that. You have one of my favorite lines, blockchain tourists. I love that. I love that comment. Yeah. What do you mean by blockchain tourists?
You know, I have seen, having been doing this for almost 3 years now, there's a lot of companies that come along and they're just kicking the tires. That,
which is okay.
It's okay. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I was quoted saying that. I did say it, and I'll say it again. But it's not intended to be as derogatory, maybe, as it came across. Which is, look, I think people should experiment around blockchain. The demarcation I'm really trying to make is Ripple has had the good fortune of having real customers touching production systems, moving real value, not sandboxes, experiments. Right. And tests.
Not theory.
Yeah, this isn't a white paper, right? And to take the most extreme example, and there are some that.
Yeah, we can go.
So to me, blockchain tourists are people who, look, they're really interested in the space. They're learning about space. They're kicking the tires. The good news for Ripple is we have a lot of demand that aren't blockchain tourists.
Right.
They are, seasoned travel veterans that know what they're trying to solve, and they're trying to solve a real problem. And we want to spend our time with that segment because, although we've grown our headcount a lot this year, we continue to have more demand than really we can handle quickly.
Right. Which is a good problem, by the way.
It's a good problem, but it's still a problem.
Yeah, it is. And it's one you have to address and know. And I want to touch on that a little bit because your background to me was very interesting. You came from Hightail. You were the CEO at Hightail. This isn't your first rodeo, if you will. You were at Yahoo. You've been at AOL. So you've been around tech in different formats, and so you can bring that type of leadership and that background to Ripple, which is another thing that I like so much. But Hightail's not exactly a blockchain.
No, not at all.
Company.
It's funny the kind of serendipity of how I ended up here. I would have described myself as a crypto enthusiast. I owned some Bitcoin by virtue of being connected with some good friends who have been, patient zeros, if you will. A guy named Wences Casares, a gentleman named Dave Goldberg, who unfortunately passed away, and a guy named Mickey Malka, are people I've all known from being around Silicon Valley for a long time and had, in one way or another, advocated. And so I had purchased some Bitcoin, which I'm glad that they were advocating.
Good for you, by the way, because I looked at it and went, this would be a good investment in 2011. Told 3 friends of mine, let's all pitch in $100. And damn it.
You should have done it. But, look, I then and even now think, some of the consumer use case that had a lot of the excitement and energy in 2015 when I joined Ripple, I felt was early and premature. And so, Ripple, and as you know, Ripple was a little bit of a contrarian, or a lot of a contrarian, and kind of saying, look, we don't think governments are going away. We don't think banks are going away. We don't think fiat currency is going away. But we still think there's a role for digital assets to play in reducing friction and accelerating the speed and reducing costs associated with payments. So when I started to talk to Chris Larson, they were recruiting to hire somebody as COO. Being a Bitcoin enthusiast or crypto enthusiast married with, I thought, a very pragmatic vision of how you actually bring this forward. And revolutions rarely happen by going to the end point first. Instead, it's a crawl. I use the expression internally about crawl, walk, run. And you got to crawl before you walk, before you run. And I think the progress Ripple's making for the industry is, I think, moving the whole revolution forward.
Well, one thing I like about Ripple too is the ability to retain talent, which in tech as a whole is incredibly difficult, right? And it's incredibly competitive. The fact that Stephen Thomas is still, he's here today, right? Brilliant individual. The idea that you're able to keep those, Chris is still, like you said, active on the board. But I know you're seeing that, right? The fight for talent.
Look, I love that you brought this up, partly because I think it's, people like to talk about the headlines.
By the way, he loved that I brought that.
I do. I think the culture of an organization is really important. And I think, Silicon Valley and various examples have kind of lost sight of that at times. And I think we've been fortunate that Ripple's had a great culture that continues to challenge people like Stefan, who I do think is a genius. And he humbles me easily. I don't actually know how old he is, but I think he still has a 2 as the first handle.
Yeah, it's depressing when you talk to him.
Yeah, but
All right.
Look, I think the people at Ripple are engaged because they believe in the mission. They believe in the big vision that we're trying to achieve. There's no question that if you are building an organization where it's all about, hey, I want to make a bunch of money, then yeah, you're going to see people exit. I think we have been very focused on a big picture of what we want to achieve over a 10-year period, and our leadership team's been, strong and stable, and I think people are excited by the progress we're making.
So let's talk about culture and mission a little bit. We should actually do an interview on segways. That would be fun, Michael. Yeah. At Gates Foundation, Costa Peric is a great friend of mine. He's a great guy. Gates Foundation, fabulous. The Mojo Loop and the project you're doing with them. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, I'm really excited about that work. Back to being a mission-driven company. Look, I will admit I'm a capitalist and I want to build a business. But it's awesome to be at a company where I feel like we can put our dent in the universe. As Ripple achieves success, you can start to see tangibly how that could have, ripple effects.
Well done.
Bear with me. As to how that can impact society in grander ways. We've actually been working at the Gates Foundation for a long time now, I think around 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. And so to finally have some of that work announced publicly is really gratifying, and I think very much on mission for what Ripple's trying to do, and we couldn't be happier about it. Costa's been a fabulous advocate, and I do think there's a certain irony of he, as the chief architect of SwiftNet.
Yeah, I was going to go there. Don't worry.
But he's been a big advocate of some of the core, particularly interledger protocol, and what we're doing there, and just couldn't be more excited about what they have going on.
And I love the focus of financial inclusion. Right. Again, taking something, and I'm a capitalist, right? Obviously, you want to build a company for the long haul, but being able to, I think the term give back is overused, but you know what I mean? I mean, you can look and you take these technology type solutions and introduce them into environments like India, right?
For sure.
Where you can come in, and some of the challenges that you would face, for example, in the US, right, or North America, thanks to technology and the solutions they have, you can kind of leapfrog the legacy problems that we have.
Right, yeah. Well, but mobile is the best example of this. We saw it very tangibly in a lot of Southeast Asia countries, certainly Africa, where you just skip the landline entirely, which is far more efficient. And so I think in some markets you may find that the quote, legacy infrastructure, what Ben Bernanke called yesterday the horse and buggy, we skip right past that. And it's going to be fun to watch some of those markets. And certainly, again, the Gates Foundation is so influential and so effective in being focused and how do we have an impact. And so they've been just amazing champions, and I'm excited by how that could play out.
Also, the news that you had about the accelerator, which I actually like because it's almost an accelerator for banks,
yeah.
Which is, by the way, the unconference on accelerator.
It's a RAP, by the way, RippleNet Accelerator Program.
Yeah.
RAP. Yeah.
RAP.
Yeah. We don't really call it RAP. RippleNet Accelerator Program.
Good idea.
We're super excited about it. I think this is an example, by the way, of how we can take advantage of the unique position Ripple is in to invest in the ecosystem really tangibly and accelerate the work we're doing. Obviously the headline that you probably have seen is, we're committing $300 million of XRP to accelerate the network effects that we're already starting to see. But if we can have that happen more quickly, more customers, more quickly getting into production, that's all the better. The earliest days of Visa, they had various incentive programs to drive that adoption, and I view this very similarly.
I like the idea because you are literally putting skin in the game, right? I mean, you're betting on yourself, if you will.
For sure.
So I love the concept. I love the idea of doing that. What's been the reception so far? I'm curious.
Oh, it's been great.
Phone won't stop ringing.
Yeah, I mean, we intentionally announced that right before Sibos, knowing that we
timing was good, by the way.
We'll have a couple hundred bank meetings while we're here, and we timed that intentionally because we want to drive adoption. We want to accelerate adoption, and that means more customers deploying more quickly, moving more volume, And again, we think that's just good for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I know it's working because when we pulled up, there were a lot of suits sitting outside, and not at all what I was expecting, by the way, when we showed up, and that made me smile.
Yeah.
Consortiums are interesting, so I want to go there just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I've been around payments, forever and a day. We've seen, for example, MCX. We've seen the worst named product ever of ISIS. God, I actually worked on that too. So the concept of consortiums is hard.
Yeah.
And within this community, within the blockchain community, we have consortiums by default. We had the recent news as far as the legal action with R3. Can you discuss where we're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So both R3 sued Ripple, Ripple sued R3. To some degree, it's a contract dispute. We entered into a partnership. There were compensation for delivering on that partnership. I think R3 is trying to paint it simply about the option agreement. It's a broader partnership. Our suit, I think, speaks for itself in that we feel like very clearly, I don't think R3 has lived up to the commitments they have made. The first step in that litigation was a suit that R3 brought against Ripple in Delaware. That case was dismissed last week. The case overall will continue. Now the case we brought against R3 will continue in California. So it's not over, but we think it's nice to see that Delaware took our view that that wasn't the right venue to even consider the case.
You've led multiple companies. Without getting too simplistic here, what makes it so hard? And would you agree we need some sort of a standardization or of approach when it comes to payments?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I want to double click on the word consortium just for a moment. Just, I think that word has been a little bit bastardized to be a little
like AI, like
crass.
blockchain, like take your pick.
Well, look, historically a consortium was a group of people coming together with equity participation. And now you have things that are called consortium, they're like, that's not really a consortium. But when I think about the consortiums, some of them are just they're open source software initiatives, right? People say, hey, we have 100 members in our consortium. It's like, no, you have 100 participants in an open source software platform. Okay, I think for Ripple it has been about how do we bring real volume into production, and people contributing to open source technology does not make one a member of a consortium.
I see a T-shirt from Princess Bride. I don't think that word means exactly what you think it means. Good meme, right? I made your marketing person just laugh right now. I'm proud of myself. So looking forward, let's talk about this conference. Come back to it a little bit because we started there. Where do you see this in 2 or 3 years? Do you see it growing in size, or do you like the intimacy?
My honest answer is I don't know.
And that's a great answer, by the way. I'm glad you said that.
Look, this is yesterday. I guess we're a day and a half into the event. Yesterday, I think, was a huge success on a lot of different levels. I'm super pleased. I had one conversation last night after a couple drinks, thinking about what does it look like next year, and no decisions have been made. I think without a doubt, we want to make sure that we remain a part of the conversation with Sibos and with banking, and if that means that we're doing something to the side, that's great. But I think it's to be determined. It is important to me, to your point. I like having an intimate gathering of a bunch of influential people in the industry that it's not just talking heads. You're really having a conversation and a dialogue.
Yeah, and that's it, right? Just not on stage and you're just spouting. It's actually getting that feedback and taking it back with your product teams and saying, this might be interesting where we go. So let's talk about payments then. And let's focus on North America, since my focus is for my company, North America. When can you please fix payments? Because this is absolutely a nightmare. When you go overseas, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this, the leapfrog effect, right?
Yeah.
India or Africa, take your pick on mobile, and Asia. And then we come back to the US. We're both, you're from Kansas, I'm from Detroit originally. Right. So we're US boys.
Yeah.
What the heck?
It is, I marvel at it. And I admit, because I didn't come from the banking or payments industry, as I was learning about Ripple and what they're trying to do, it's just unbelievable to me that truly the most efficient way for me to get money to London today would be to go buy a ticket at the airport here in Toronto and fly it there.
Yes.
That's a crazy thing. I can stream video from the space station, yet I can't move my own money from point A to point B efficiently. These are infinitely fixable things. It is a crawl, walk, run dynamic, but I'm super excited by the progress we're seeing, the momentum that is building. It took us, a long time to sign our first bank, and then it was a little faster to do our next bank, I am very excited about the pipeline for Q4 and feel like, particularly with this RippleNet Accelerator program where we're investing to incentives to even accelerate things more, I'm super excited about where we sit.
Well, I think influencing and what you're doing with folks like Ben Bernanke, right? That targeted education and getting those spokespeople in, right? Where it's not anarchy, right? Is an important move, right? Both within the regulatory side and the banking side. So again, the accelerator, the work with the Gates Foundation, getting the thumbs up from Bill Gates is not a bad thing in this day and age. The moves, Brad, I really like. And the socks are fantastic, okay?
Thank you.
That's what matters. Brad, thanks for the time.
It was great. I really appreciate it. Yeah.